For the longest time now, it feels like anime games were hit or miss in a lot of people's eyes, and you either fall on the side of absolutely loving these games or just totally hating them. For me, I'm someone who lands more on the side of absolutely enjoying a lot of these games, and I can still understand the shortcomings of many of them while still really enjoying them, just as they're attached to a lot of, IPs that I really enjoyed and grew up watching. And honestly, we've seen a lot of arena fighters and really low effort mobile cash grabs from a lot of these anime IPs. And I feel like we do deserve, larger titles and AAA scale title, anime games. And we've gotten that with stuff like, the Dragon Ball games and stuff, and, the One Piece Odyssey, game that released a couple years ago. But I feel like, I want to consistently see more, big budget anime games and anime titles, release. Well, now we might be seeing an end to that, as Toei just established Toei Games, and they're going to be publishing a bunch of really dope, fun games that I actually do want to touch on and just kind of talk about the, everything going on behind the scenes with anime games and such, because I think this is a really positive sign going forward for anime titles, IPs, and stuff being, attached to games, and just what, what Toei is building right now, I think is a really cool thing. And I don't think we're going to see them just, license out Luffy or Goku as, easy anymore. I think that you are going to see them really have more of a creative reign in this, as they are publishing so many of these future titles, and we have 3 that aren't even, attached to any of their animes or mangas, such as One Piece or, Dragon Ball as of right now, that will be releasing very soon. So if you've seen my other content, or you can just take a look and look at what I've released if you're not familiar with my channel, I do a lot of RPG or JRPG content, and for me, while I do want to talk about the 3 games that Toei will be publishing soon, I do want to touch on that, this one game that had a pretty decently big impact on my childhood, and that was Dragon Ball Attack of the Saiyans on the DS. If you want to know what happens when a Toei property is treated with mechanical respect, then you can look at the game that I just brought up, Dragon Ball Attack of the Saiyans on the Nintendo DS. It's a personal favorite of mine, as while I did grow up loving the Budokai Tenkaichi games, this pure crunchy JRPG developed by Monolith Soft, who are of course absolute legends that have made the Xenoblade games, I think is really the one that just really took my heart. I love this game so much, and it proved that the high stakes tactical energy of the show actually translates to a really good turn-based game, and the turn-based systems better than button mashing games. Toei established their own studio now, which means you might actually get that kind of level of depth again with a JRPG game, and hopefully we do, and hopefully, we could see something super dope coming out of Toei games really soon with a JRPG inspired game from either, One Piece or DBZ. Now, in terms of those 3 games that Toei will be publishing, their first move isn't some AAA blockbuster, it's a really smart publishing play on their part. They've picked up 3 distinct indie titles for Steam that show that they're prioritizing very creative games over safe bets: Killa, Hino, and Debug Nephemee. Killa is developed by Black Tangerine, and it's a stylish, narrative-driven mystery that hints at a dark cinematic tone. Hino is a game that shows a willingness to explore unique art styles outside of the quote-unquote Toei standard, or the kind of, just what we've expected out of Toei type of animation. And Debug Nephemee, which is honestly the game that really interests me the most of the 3, is a bullet hell RPG hybrid that suggests that Toei is looking at really a game that's going to show mechanical innovation, and I can't be more excited for this one. All 3 of these look super exciting, but Debug Nephemee is the one that really has caught my eye so far of the 3. Now, what really surprised me with the initial announcement that I believe we got, it was either beginning of this week or it was last week when they announced Toei Games, was that they weren't going with a pre-established IP, in terms of a manga or an anime or whatever. I don't think this is a gamble, as I don't know how much money is really even behind these games, because it seems like these are smaller budget, really cool opportunities for these, developers to put out with a large brand like Toei, behind them and helping them with this. And I think, there really is kind of no losses to be taken, I think it's a win-win situation for both the developers and Toei, because I think, they're just shining light on 3 games that I think have really cool, art styles and interesting kind of takes to them, and they're very creative. I think the other thing that you could look at is that by stepping away from doing something in the Dragon Ball or One Piece universe, they're really stepping away from the possible quote-unquote legacy backlash, and people being mad at a certain style of game that they're releasing, in one of those universes in terms of the genre. And, with Toei Games, now publishing these games, I think it'd be really cool if we could see them possibly remake or kind of port up that Sailor Moon RPG, Sailor Moon, Another Story from the SNES, and get that, give it some modern flair, because one of the things about that is that I remember playing that when I was super young. I definitely did not beat that. I, only put a little bit of time into it, but I really do want to go back and play that, on my own now. Maybe I'll go back and, find a way to play it. But if they were able to remake that or port that and bring it up, it would be great, because it's become a cult classic. And that's one of the things that, as while I do consider myself an anime fan, I'm definitely not as diehard as some other people are. And just seeing the cult classic status that that game has gained has been really dope to see, because it's a game that I feel like doesn't get remembered, you know what I mean, as fondly as it should, just based on different gameplay I've watched and just kind of, you know, vague memories I have of playing it when I was like 6 or 7 years old, you know. And I think, yeah, I think being able to go back and bring that game up, or maybe even, you know, Attack of the Saiyans or the 3DS Dragon Ball game, I'm forgetting the name of it, I think it was Dragon Ball Fusions or something like that, which I did not get the chance to play. I think that'd be really dope. And I think just going back and getting some of these older RPGs or even older anime games and publishing them, or, you know, remaking them, I think Toei has a lot of opportunities on their hands. And I think in terms of, you know, anime RPGs, you see a lot of times where you have high fidelity animation, but then low fidelity, you know, mechanics and systems and stuff like that. And I feel like this is something that Toei has the opportunity to do a good job at, you know, just stopping that from being a constant trend with, you know, anime RPGs. And I'd really like to see Toei, you know, release an anime RPG that is able to have high fidelity animation and a great mechanics system, because I think that would be really cool and just an opportunity where, you know, I think the RPG market right now would love to see an anime game based around, you know, DBZ or One Piece or something of the like that is super well done mechanically. And honestly, if Monolith Soft came in and did a game like that, then forget it, because it would be, in my opinion, you know, one of the best games of whatever year releases in, because we know the quality that Monolith Soft puts out these games in, you know what I mean? And I do want to talk about One Piece Odyssey, since I was just talking about, you know, anime RPGs, as I did play that demo when it released, you know, that's years ago now, and I did really like it. But for me, I said I'm not going to get into this game until I get further into the show. You know, I'm in the Whiskey Peak arc right now, so I do got to really, you know, push through and get along, because it is a very good anime and I have enjoyed it so far. But there's so many episodes and stuff, and just different stuff's kind of like held me back. But I got to like lock in and, you know, get myself to keep watching, you know. And kind of like for me, I said I'm not going to pick, you know, that game up until I get further along in the show. But I think with just how much it goes on Steam, you know what I mean, on sale, I feel like I'm probably going to pick it up really soon, as I've really enjoyed watching the anime, you know, and just kind of continuing through with it. So I hope maybe I get it on sale, you know, sometime soon. And I, you know, as I keep going through the show. And, you know, I grew up watching it on 4Kids TV, One Piece, but I didn't, you know, watch the whole show, and obviously it's still going. But yeah, I think, you know, a One Piece RPG would be super dope if we got a new one, because like I said, I like the mechanics of the game, and I thought there was a lot to really like about One Piece Odyssey. I just wasn't as into the show as I am now. You know, I grew up with it, so I was like, oh, I could just jump into this game. But I was like, no, I should lock in and get further into actually like watching it all the way through, even though it is a long anime. And honestly, my PC is a 5060 Ti, and I have the Steam Deck OLED, so I'm like, that would be a great opportunity to jump into this One Piece Odyssey game, you know, for real this time, rather than just playing the demo, as I could bounce between PC and handheld. And the game's only $40 right now, you know what I mean? So, and I think the, you know, deluxe right now on Steam is only like 60, so that's really not bad. So I might have to hop right into this game, you know, sometime soon, as I keep, you know, watching the show and getting further along in these arcs and stuff. And like I said, I'm on the Whiskey Peak arc right now, so as I just continue to go on, I'm probably going to pick this game up for sure. And yeah, I think if we got like an HD 2D anime, you know, RPG game from, gosh, I mean, you know, either the One Piece or DBZ universe, and you had Monolith or another really great developer do it, I think that'd be really dope. And I think the formula should be, you know, looking at that Sailor Moon Another Story game, and just the fact that it felt like it was, you know, focused on being a JRPG first and a tie-in to the anime or manga second, you know, as what it should be, because it should be, you know, gameplay focused, and then you could tie it in with the characters, anime and manga, you know, lore second. I think whether, you know, Toei is creating these new worlds or returning to their crown jewels, the goal should be the same regardless, which is stop making products out of these games and make them projects, make them something that, you know what I mean, gamers will love and will appreciate, even if they're not into the anime. You know what I mean? And somebody who is super into a specific anime will only, you know, get even more enjoyment out of it. While, like I said, someone who might not be into that anime, you know, at the time, maybe plays the game and enjoys it, then gets further into it or starts watching and binging, you know, that show. And I think the biggest thing is that I don't want to just see these favorite characters of mine on screen. I want to really indulge and feel like I'm super engrossed and in their world with these games. Like I said, I can only speak for myself, but I'm sure many other anime or manga fans would agree with me on that, where it should be more gameplay first and tying it into the anime and the characters second. And if we do get any JRPGs in these anime universes, I would hope that the systems and the mechanics come first, and the animation and really the lore and everything tied to the anime or manga comes second. So anyway, guys, I want to know down below what you think about anything we talked about today in terms of what, Toei IPs would you like to see in a game, what kind of genre or gameplay style would you like, and also how do you feel about the 3 titles that they reveal that they're publishing. If you enjoyed the video, then I'd really appreciate if you could give it a like, and if you're a fan of RPGs, anime, manga, whatever, Nintendo games, I have so much stuff, planned to be releasing really soon, and I'd really appreciate if you could, subscribe and stay tuned to that, because I have a lot of fun ideas planned for the future. Thank you all so much for watching, though, and I am out. Peace.